When I was 27 years old, it's a long time ago, I went to a church in Andover, New Jersey, the Andover United Methodist Church. And the first moves were always in June. So I was there June, July, August. And so I was visiting, I must have visited about 500 homes, non-members, thinking that that's a great way to encourage people to come to church. It's not. Nobody ever came. Not one person who I visited that were not connected to the church. So I did something that I wondered how it would be received. I put a big sign in the front of the church that said, "Trespassers Welcome." And you know, that got into the newspapers. They actually took a picture of that sign and me standing with it. Maybe that was okay. I don't know what was okay, but anyway, you think it's easy to join church? Have we set the bar too low? Can anybody come in and just have everything, you know, everybody and anybody? Suppose we required people to walk on hot coals as an initiation into the church. Maybe people would take membership more seriously. I mean, I know that businesses do this in their seminar. Burger King did it with their employees in Key Largo, not far from here. And this firewalking exercise, all the employees, were, all fired up and ready to go, no pun intended. They walked down the coals. Unfortunately, the ritual didn't go as intended. Didn't have the effect that they wanted. Many of the employees ended up with first and second degree burns. Lawsuits began. One of their co-workers was hospitalized, and the motivational coach quickly had to come up with, "Oh, well, some people have just incredibly sensitive feet." Really? Well, now we're exploring what went wrong. Oh my gosh. Well, eventually they banned firewalking as one of the exercises, and the grateful employees would have rushed to thank the bosses, but it's very difficult to put too much weight on oozing wounds. I have a feeling that churches wouldn't quite grow like that as fast if we required them to walk across an 8-foot bed of hot coals. Maybe they would grow faster, who knows? Anything that comes too cheaply isn't appreciated. I mentioned firewalking because to deal with a bigger subject, what does it take to motivate people? Millions of dollars are given to this. There's books all over the place, motivational speakers, and they wrestle with that question. If you have the answer to what it takes to motivate people, you'll be rich, because that's the pressing question for many of us. How can I motivate myself to do the things I know I ought to do? I always say I do the things that I don't want to do in order to do the things that I do want to do. Self-motivation is just as tricky as trying to motivate other people. I mean, I wasn't always this good looking, and my magnificent body and everything that you've noticed wasn't always like that. I had to work to get this. I used to be ugly and fat. What? Oh, anyway. Well, you get the idea. That's why there's all these self-help motivational books. You remember Three Dog Night? Jeremiah was a bullfrog, was a good friend of mine. Well, Jeremiah is not a bullfrog. Jeremiah is my son, Jeremy. Jeremiah was also a prophet. Maybe you remember. He said, I'm young, don't pick me. And he heard he heard a prophecy. He said, I don't know how to speak. Now he'd become a prophet to the nations. Now he didn't walk on a bed of live coals, but he became a powerful communicator, very powerful. And he enlivened his presentations with actions. He wore a heavy yoke around his neck as a sign of what would happen to the people if they didn't listen to him. Things didn't go well. Things never go well for prophets, if you notice. He's known as the broken-hearted prophet because people rejected his prophecies. They ridiculed him. They taunted him. They put him in jail. And at one point, they threw him in a pit to die. Now, at some time, he became very bitter. And he expresses that anger and frustration in his writings. Some people believe he was murdered in Egypt because those people got angry too. But still, up to the time of his death, he persisted in being prophetic. Now, here's what's very interesting. Jeremiah's prophecies were proved to be correct. What he was saying was spot on. And that was little consolation to him. Excuse me. And it didn't endear him to his critics. No prophet wants to tell the people that they're going to suffer and then be proven correct. That's no way to win friends or influence people. It's much more profitable to tell people about a prosperity gospel, sort of, prophesy and tell people in the head, you're going to be rich, or you're going to be this, and you're going to have all you want. It's much better to do that. In every way. And that was not the message on Jeremiah's heart. Well, Jeremiah was true to his mission, and he's recognized as one of Israel's greatest prophets. I did a lot of studying of Jeremiah. A very authentic message, if you will, from one who's ever lived. Well, what kept him going? His work was not rewarded with the kind of acclaim he expected. I mean, we love to do things, and we love to get accoladed for it, thanked for it. We love to be honored or at least acknowledged. Some of us go about our daily life, we raise our families, we work at the job, and we serve in a community. We're not rewarded either. Life is difficult, and the very people we look to for support may be completely unappreciative. Well, where do we find motivation to keep going? Where do you find motivation to keep going? To keep striving, to keep serving, to be all you were meant to be. Well, I think, after being here, Jeremiah had your kind of strong conscience, your consciousness. He was a prophet to the nations. He had a strong conscience. And I believe that most Unitarian Universalist people have a conscience. And a consciousness, though generally it's not refined like Jeremiah is so stated, most of us are incurably romantic. 5 black officers beat to death Tyree Nichols, age 29, for driving while black. Oh, Immediately arrested, charged, jailed, fired. Coincidence? They were all 5 black officers? Just happenstance? Then I'm thinking of Trayvon Martin in Sanford, where George Zimmerman shot him at point blank range because he was on the neighborhood watch. George got off. Trayvon is dead. Amadou Diallo, who came from Africa, Giuliani's goon squads were looking for somebody like him. And it was in his country, you pull out your ID and show the police. He was pulling it out, and just as he got to here, they pummeled him with 41 bullets in 4 seconds. George Floyd, age 46, was trying to pass off a counterfeit $20 bill, and Officer Devin Chauvin sat on his neck with his knee for 9 minutes and 29 seconds. Killed him as he was begging for his mother and begging to breathe. Dante Wright, age 20, in the car, unarmed, with his girlfriend, was shot at point blank range in the head. They got off. Andre Hill, coming out of his garage with his cell phone, they blew his head off. He didn't even know what happened. Manuel Ellis, 33, was walking from the convenience store. They shot him at point blank range. Breonna Taylor in Atlanta, age 26, sleep at home. They blew her away in her own apartment with her boyfriend. Oh, but they said, we got her on tape. She was getting drugs with somebody. Right there at that time? Well, no, but Stephen Clark, age 22, was shot in his backyard simply because he was waving his hands. Oh, and then there's Freddie Gray in Baltimore, age 25. They beat him to a pulp, threw him into the paddy wagon, drove that thing like a bat out of hell, and the banging of the head against all the metal inside killed him. They settled with the city of Baltimore. And then there's Eric Gardner, overweight man, age 43, in Staten Island. He was selling Lucy cigarettes. What's that? 1 cigarette will get you 50 cents. That's illegal. Because he said this has got to stop. They put their hands on his neck. He begged them 11 times, I can't breathe. They left him there and were very slow and reticent to get help to him and were mocking his overweight condition. They got off. So in one sense, what happened here was different. There were black officers to this moment. I have no idea why any of that happened. It tries your soul. Some work at ignoring such things. I've had many people say, I can't look at it. I can't look at the tape. And I thought this was passé after Rodney King. You remember if we admit our flaws, we might have a plan for our lives accordingly. Some of us have a conscience and a conscientiousness that know that we deserve better, and we are better than this, as Elijah Cummings said, that congressman from Baltimore. We're better than this. Jeremiah had a super consciousness, a presence in his life. Even before he was born, he felt he would be prophetic. Do you have a conscience, a conscientiousness in your life? Well, let me tell you, there's a woman I knew named Shauna, and she was on Wall Street. She was 6 figures and moving up. And one day, she was invited to tour a prison in Texas. It was life-changing. You know, not only did she have the compassion for these inmates, but she saw they had potential in the business world. I mean, drug dealers, as slimy as they are entrepreneurs. They know how to handle money. I'm thinking of this one drug dealer. He's saving up to buy a house. Really? Wow. Well, could their potential be unleashed in any way? She wondered. She was so intrigued by the possibility that she left behind all of that New York career, moved to Texas with her husband. She started a ministry to inmates, developing their skills as legitimate business people. It was not easy. When she was moving all of her belongings from New York to Texas, people that she's trying to help, those same kind of people, stole all of her possessions, stole everything she had. Now, I would have turned back. Now, forget it, man. You know, that's it. It's just everybody has their limits, right? But she was not dismayed. She had a conscience, a strong drive. And she hung in there. And today, more than 370 inmates graduated from her program, 97% of whom were employed within 4 weeks after they were released from prison. Yeah. How did she do it? And I asked her, how'd you do it? And she just said, bring it on, no matter what. You see, that feeling that Shauna had when her goods were stolen by the very people she was trying to help is the feeling that plagued Jeremiah all of his life, and maybe plagues you in some capacity. My dog loves chicken. So, you know, it could be late hours. I'm trying to get to Costco or wherever to get a chicken. And so one day I said to Jonathan, I don't know where to get a chicken. He'll just have to have something else. No, he won't eat anything else. Well, I'll go get a chicken. Well, he got to the store and he had no money. And one man paid for the chicken for Jonathan. And Jonathan came home and said, we have to pay it forward. That was the condition. I don't pay anything forward. Well, you know, I've started to do it. I saw a couple of homeless people, and Jonathan is taking note of that's one more dollar. Let's see, the chicken was $7, so you got $6 more to go. Well, you see, Jeremiah, all of his life, people would not listen. They didn't want anything to interrupt their convenience or their comfort. He said, look, guys, we have a problem. And then they taunted him, and then they ridiculed him, and then they persecuted him. And a lesser man would have folded up, gone home. But Jeremiah kept at it, and kept at it. Jeremiah knew he was set apart. Do you think that you are set apart? Not for privilege, but for responsibility. Big difference. Well, listen to the words here. It says, what does it mean to be set apart? That is the question. Have you ever heard the phrase? I've heard it said about me. Oh, that's just Jack. He marches to the tune of a different drummer. Now, I don't know how to take that. How do you take? Often it's used derisively. You know, like it means someone is out of step with the rest of society. I don't mind that. We are a very conformist society. No one wants to be thought of as different, and there's comfort in the crowd, somewhat. As Dr. King said, the absence of tension is not the presence of justice, and that's what brings peace. We want to make sure if our tie is in style. You know, I wore Mickey today. But, we want to, you remember those zoot suits with the large, well, I got a bunch of them. We wouldn't be caught dead. And I remember talking to my mother. I said, Ma, I can't wear Keds. I can't wear Ked sneakers. All the kids have Nikes and Adidas and well, you go down the list. She said, tell that to the person who has no feet. Usually, it's a harmless game, but sometimes it gets people into trouble. I remember a dear friend of mine named Nathan. A hilarious story. He told this story. He said he was afraid of doctors, and he didn't like spending money on things like that. But he had headaches, and eventually it was so bad he went to see a doctor. And then the doctor said, I want to give you these tests, et cetera, but he had no insurance. So it's thousands of dollars. Well, he just dismissed it and forgot about it. Well, then my friend Nat remembered his old friend Harry had headaches too. So he called up Harry. He was his good friend. And how did Harry get rid of his headaches without spending all that money? Well, he's going to do what Harry did. So he called Harry. He got his wife. And she said, oh, Harry's dead. He's dead? Right away, he dropped the phone, picked it up again, and he started making the calls to get these appointments for all those expensive tests that he. And weeks and thousands of dollars later, he was relieved to learn, well, there's nothing seriously wrong. There's no brain tumor, no cancer. Excited, he called Harry's wife to apologize. I'm sorry I hung up the phone, but I want you to know I was upset, and I was suffering the same way that Harry was suffering, and well, she said, wait, no. Had you stayed on the phone, you would have known. Harry didn't die from his headaches. He was hit by a truck. And so much from Harry's experience, right? I remember saying to my mother, but Mom, all the kids are doing it. All the kids are doing it. And my mother would say, well, if they jumped off a cliff, would you jump off the cliff? And I would always, because she would always second, she got me, Well, it depends on how high the cliff was, I guess. I mean, she got me. I didn't want to admit that. And I think that's what happened here. I think these 5 police were sheep. And the lead sheep couldn't stop beating this fella. And they did it. Camaraderie, if you want to call it. We're all in it together, if you want to call it. I think they were just caught up. And the crowd can be wrong. The crowd was wrong in Jeremiah's time too. They wanted riches and idols, and they wanted to ignore responsibility. But Jeremiah was set apart to remind them of what those were. Now, I would like to suggest to you that we're becoming a society that's moving away from church. All church. Many great churches with millions of people still make their way to get to those churches every Sunday. But each year, the numbers become less and less and less. That I know. And our society is becoming a very hostile society to many values. I have a lot of rich friends, and they say, it doesn't matter how much money I have, they tell me, because you and I have the same values. And I'm thinking of my dear friend who makes like $2 million a month. I said, we may have the same values, but you have more valuables than I do. I mean, and that's true. You see, we're looking for people who are willing to be set apart in the Unitarian Universalist church. We're looking for people who will think for themselves and not accept anything if they don't think it's right. There are people who look down on society. Unitarian Universalists are looking for different types of set-apart people with a service mentality who want to improve society. Oh, that's painful. That's the road, that's the hardest. And what does it require? Like Jeremiah, to have a strong consciousness, a conscientious drive, knowing that you're set apart. Oh, it doesn't affect everybody. Very few people will feel that way because there's comfort in the crowd. Crowd mentality is dangerous. We need the police. We need even the sheriff in Tampa who won't visit with hope. We need him. I can't believe he won't meet with us, but that's another issue. And then there's a purpose-driven life. Many of us, if I were to ask you, what is your purpose in life? Well, I think Rick Warren, a pastor out there in California, I didn't think much of him. He wrote that book, A Purpose-Driven Life. So I opened it up, and the first words of that book says, "It's not about you." He hooked me. He knew it wasn't about him. It's not about you. We got work to do. Dirty work, unrewarding work. Jeremiah knew that. He'd been called to the task. He knew what needed to be done. People willing to do what needs to be done today. Barack Obama, our 44th president, went to visit Buchenwald prison in Germany. Many more than 56,000 prisoners slain by Nazis in the World War II. Buchenwald was hell on earth. And there were Jewish doctors treated like everybody else. They rounded them up. They got up at 4 a.m. They stood for roll call and the shivering cold like everybody else. They went out and worked the roads like everybody else. And it was dark, cold. Then they got soup that barely nourished them. And when everyone else went to sleep, they would huddle together in the back of the barracks. And they talked to each other. And they stimulated each other's minds. How can we help our people who are sick right here in the barracks? And if only they had some medication. And they rigged together some things. They challenged each other. They rigged together primitive X-ray things so that they could actually see ways to help their own people. They bribed the guards for some materials and some medicine. And with the help of the other prisoners who were electricians and engineers, it was almost like a mini secretive ER room, how they could help people who were suffering. They knew that their only reward would be death in a crematorium, and yet they continued to do the work ministering to the other people who were confined. Now, many of us don't live in that extreme. Most of us will never really suffer for our faith. But many of us are in situations which are not appreciated. And even though we're doing the best that we can, some of us are caring for aging parents, some for special needs children. Some of us are working against great odds to make the community better, to make our church a better church. We know we're not prophets, but we do have a strong conscience and a conscientiousness in our lives. It shows in how we live our lives. We believe we've been all set apart to make a difference. You're called to make a difference. You wouldn't be sitting here if you weren't. Our lives are driven by a purpose to be all that we were ever created to be. How many people know? Just raise your hand. Can you name a Nobel Peace Prize winner? Anybody? Go ahead, Robert. 1964. At 1984. 2009. Anyone else? There were just 3 people, right? How about Elie Wiesel in 1986? How about Jimmy Carter in the year 2006 with his National Center for Peace with Justice? Oh, we could go on and on. Mahala, the girl that was shot by the Taliban. On and on and on. Do you know something about the Nobel Prize for Peace? Not one person who ever received the award ever achieved the peace. They did it. They received the award because of their efforts to do so. I'm thrilled about that. And we need to know that we matter when we give effort. These efforts are not in vain any more than anybody else's who's ever tried to make life better for people. Hang in there is the great admonition, because your work has great impact on others. And I said this the first time I ever met you. What you do helps the work to go on, hope to still live, and dreams never die. You're there. Before you're there to set apart. Hang in there. I am certain, at least this has been what I believed all the time. Your conscientiousness and your conscience to do well will not let you down. Amen.